Welcome back to the Authentically Broken Your Pain Has Purpose podcast. Now, for anyone who's new to the show, we're glad you're joining us today. So, this show is designed to build as we go, as far as the content is concerned. So I encourage you to go back and watch each episode from the beginning in order to get the most out of the podcast as well as your time here today. Now, last week's show, friends, that was a hard and heavy hitting one. I think you would agree. However, it was absolutely essential that we tackle the subject that we did, which was family. More specifically, we fleshed out what a family should look like and how a family should operate with respect to how our Creator, God Almighty, intentionally designed the family to function. Now, this is not an easy topic to tackle, and that's because of how society views and promotes the family unit to us. And also because talking about it forces us to be very honest and vulnerable about our own family dynamics and personal issues. Now, with that said, my hope and prayer is that as we dive into these seemingly controversial, or actually more appropriately stated would be sensitive issues for each of us, my hope and prayer is that we will learn to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. Now, some of you might be thinking, what? Why would I ever want to become comfortable with anything that is uncomfortable for me? That's more on it. Well, actually, that's a good question. And this actually leads into what we will be talking about today, which is the need for perseverance, which in turn leads to transformation. So let's dive in. Now, you may be thinking, okay, talking about perseverance, that sounds good. But what does that have to do with embracing discomfort? Here's the thing. Most people, most of us, and this includes me, we're looking for change, not transformation. Notice I said the need for transformation, not the need for change, because they are two different things. You know why I said the need for transformation and not change? Here it is. Because comfort, at least some level of comfort, can exist and remain in change. But comfort cannot exist at all at any level in transformation. And man, are we ever comfort driven. This is not only true at the societal level, but the individual level true. And this isn't true everywhere around the world, but it's especially true in Western society in the United States. The average American loses their mind if they're unable to purchase their grande soy latte, which, sorry, no offense. I just don't drink those. Or whatever their coffee preference of the morning is, they lose their minds if they're not able to purchase that on their way to work. Or even worse, heaven forbid that the dishwasher at home breaks and you have to wash your dishes by hand. What? Okay, now yes, I'm being facetious. But the reality is that these inconveniences, which is what they are, friends, they're not even on the radar of being problems for many people around the world. We need to think about that. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that having conveniences such as these and blessings like we do is wrong or bad in and of themselves. They're not. And trust me, I am super thankful to the Lord for all the many amazing blessings and comforts that we have been afforded in life, especially in this country. I love my dishwasher. I mean, I would and I do dishes by hand, but I don't prefer that. I love my washer and dryer. I've never washed clothes by hand. Oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to. But again, that's a comfort. And I appreciate it. And those comforts are not bad in and of themselves. I am not saying that. So do not think that and do not misconstrue my words because that's not what I'm saying. But, and this is true for me, I've had to ask myself this, so I'm going to ask every one of you this as well. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, at what cost? What is the cost of us having these comforts in our lives all the time and surrounding us? Here's why I ask that. And here's what I mean by asking that. Have you ever taken the time to reflect on the things you have and the things you do? And honestly ask yourself, is this a necessity Or, in all honesty, is it merely a comfort? Now, let's take that even further. If something is a necessity in order to function as a human being the way God intended you to function on this earth, so if something is a necessity based on that, friends, that's called a human right. And human rights are not given to humans by other humans. A human right is given to you by your creator, who is God. Everything else is a privilege or a comfort. Let me give you an example that most of us either have never even considered, we don't even think about it this way, or we almost always tend to forget. Here it is. Being able to obtain a driver's license in the US and drive a motor vehicle, did you know that is a privilege? It's not a right. Did you know that? And we know this is true because obtaining a driver's license requires you to pass a written test, a driving test, or it should. At least it did back in the day when I was learning to drive. I'm not sure what's going on these days. Again, I digress. Another topic, another day. But obtaining such a license requires you to pass a written test, pass a driving test. Along with, you have to give over certain information about yourself so the government who manages these licenses is able to keep up with you and contact you or track you if needed. So, in other words, there are requirements in order to obtain this right, or this privilege, not a right, to obtain a license to have this privilege. There are requirements outside of just being a citizen in America, a citizen of the US. Now, if driving were a right and not a privilege, a right, as the US Constitution labels these rights, they're called inalienable rights or inalienable, meaning you cannot put a lien against these rights, meaning they are rights given to you and I by God, our creator. Therefore, no man can take them away or encumber the performance of them. If driving was an inalienable right, you wouldn't need a license to partake in the activity, nor would you need anyone else's permission to do so. Are you tracking? Now, for those of you, and I know where some of you may be going, and kudos to you for understanding this, but for those of you who are really savvy and you understand the Constitution the way that was written for the Republic of the United States, and you may be thinking, Vicki, actually, per that Constitution, our government can't actually regulate this for people. I'm going to agree with you to a certain extent, but we are talking about semantics here. We're talking about two different things. And what you are talking about is, no, they cannot regulate or take away your ability for transportation. That's why they call it driving. They're two different things. But I digress. That's a totally different topic. So let's quit chasing that rabbit and get back on page here, okay? That's something totally different. So just go with me. I'm talking about driving. My point is this. Most of us tend to view being able to get in our car whenever we want and drive somewhere as our right to do so, don't we? I know I do that quite often. I forget it's a privilege. And this is why it becomes so incredibly hard and even sometimes impossible to get someone when they have reached an age where they're no longer capable of making sound and timely decisions behind the wheel. This is why it becomes so hard and even impossible a lot of times to get these people to give up their keys and not drive anymore. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? If any of you have ever been in this situation with an elderly loved one, and I have, and it's not easy, friends, you know what I'm talking about. What is the first thing that these people, someone in this situation who needs to have their keys removed for their safety and everyone else's, what's the first thing they say to someone when someone is trying to talk to them about no longer being able to drive themselves? I'll give you an example, of what I heard, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard the same. Typically, they say something like this: "You're not taking my keys from me. I have a right to drive. You don't get to tell me I can't do that." Sound familiar? Right? This happens all the time. And they say that because a lot of times they're saying, my driver's license is still valid. For my example, the state of Texas says I can drive. So who are you to tell me I can't? Well, what they're not talking about and recognizing is, yeah, your driver's license is still valid because the time hasn't come for you to renew it. And the DMV has no idea how long it takes you to decide to turn right at a signal with your blinker on, that it takes you 5 minutes when it should take a split second, or they have no idea your vision is deteriorated so much that you're not seeing clearly. There's all these factors that go into it. But my point is, we behave that way and people respond that way because they view it as a right, not a privilege. So where am I going with this? Here's why I'm using this example, why I'm breaking this down right now. All of that to say that most of us will accommodate change. Even if we don't like it. I don't like change, but I'll accommodate it. But all of us typically resist and fight transformation because they're different. So think about this with me for a minute. When it comes to the driver's license, it's not just a change to lose the ability to drive yourself from place to place. That's not just a change in your situation. That is a transformation in the way in which you are transported. It's a transformation in the way in which you function. It's not just a change. That's why it's resisted and fought most of the time. Are you starting to understand what I'm saying? This is easier to understand when we look at and we understand the difference in the meaning between the words change and transformation. Yes, we're going to talk about the meaning of words here because words matter. Therefore, their meaning matters. And more often than not, we don't use words correctly because we don't understand what they mean. So let's talk about what is the difference. Here's what change means. It means to alter or make different in a particular way, or to replace with another, to pretty much just swap out, or to give a different course or position, depending on what you're talking about. Now listen to the difference in the meaning of the word transformation. Transformation is the process of transforming, or the process of changing in composition or structure. That means you're changing at your very makeup, how you are organized at an intimate level, or how something is organized at an intimate level. It means to change the outward form or appearance. It also means to change in character or condition. So did you hear the difference in the definition between the two? You see, change allows us to retain control to some degree. And therefore, we can retain comfort. Because if we have control, we're going to make sure there's comfort there. And that's just instinctive to us as humans, friends. I'm not dogging anybody. That's instinctive to me, just like it is to you. But transformation, that reworks us at a deep and an intimate level in such a way that our literal condition, our literal being and character come out different than they previously were. And this type of work removes control and comfort from you. It's why we don't like it. And if we're all being completely honest, this literally scares the hell out of us. I'm not saying that facetiously, and I'm not just saying it flippantly. It literally scares the hell out of us, and that's why we resist it and we fight against it. Am I wrong? I know it's true for me. You see, as humans, we tend to think that the things and experiences that ultimately work out for our good, we tend to think those should not bring pain or difficulty. But friends, this couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, we spend a good majority of our time working to ensure that our lives are as pain-free as possible. Don't we? Now, with that said, I am not saying that we should be seeking out pain. That would be crazy. I'm not saying that. I need you to please hear me. Okay? Please hear what I am saying and don't run with what I'm not saying. I am not saying that pain, difficulty, and suffering, which, by the way, they're the results of evil, corruption, and broken people and broken things in this world. I am not saying those things are in and of themselves good for us. I am also not saying that they should ever happen to humans, and nor am I saying that they were ever designed by our Creator to happen to us. I'm not saying any of that. They are a result of a fallen, broken world with broken people living in it. Honestly, it's just the fallout we experience from brokenness. And this is brokenness that's designed to lead to our destruction and our death. Remember the first show together, we talked about the two different types of brokenness. This is a brokenness that's designed to lead to our destruction and our death. So I'm not saying that it was intended to be good for us. And I'm not saying that we should desire it or that the Lord created it or ever designed this world or designed us to go through that. I am not saying any of that. But even though that is true, something else is true at the same time. So in spite of the fact that these things and that the intended aim and goal of this type of destruction, pain, difficulty, and suffering, even though, and in spite of the fact the intended aim and goal of these is to destroy us, the Lord desires to work in and with this for our ultimate good. If, it's a big if and only if we will allow him to, meaning it's a choice on our part, how we respond to it. You see, he wants to use what the forces behind a broken world, and there are spirit forces that are evil behind this broken world. He wants to use what these forces deem and put out for our demise and our destruction. He wants to use those things to restore us. And he does this through the transformation process. And the way he goes about restoring us, the brokenness that comes in that is brokenness that, as we talked about in the first show, that's the type of brokenness that leads to peace and life. It's a choice. We don't get to choose that we're going to be broken and experience brokenness. We just get to choose the type of brokenness that we allow to shape us. Does that make sense? You see, the reality is change does not require your destruction. It doesn't. But transformation does. Right? I change my clothes every day, or I do. We all should, especially your drawers, friends. Unless you're out camping in a remote wilderness, you can just turn them inside out because that saves you on washing. And look, it's a good thing, okay? Most of you are thinking, oh my goodness, well, just act like you didn't hear that. Anyways, I digress. Let's get back to the point at hand. My goodness, I can chase rabbit. The reality is change doesn't require destruction, but transformation does. Even though the creator of this world and the creator of each of us didn't create nor intend destruction and death for us, because he didn't, God uses those things to bring new life. He can bring good from the bad. He's the only entity that can, and he longs to do that, but we have to allow him to, because he will never force us to do anything we don't want, even if that means choosing destruction over life. It's free will, friends. And this type of bringing life from destruction, it's seen throughout all of his creation. Did you know that? Let me give you a few examples we can all understand. So most of you, I would think, probably know that for many trees in different botany species and forests, fires are not only beneficial, but they are actually necessary to the continuation of life. Did you know that? You see, we tend to think of any forest fire as destructive and bad for the plant life in the forest. But we would be wrong. Now, don't get me wrong again. Not all forest fires are good and beneficial to the forest. I am not saying that. I didn't say that. It's the low intensity natural forest fires, because there are low intensity natural forest fires that were created to occur. It's these low intensity natural fires that benefit and bring new life to the forests. You see, the problem we have seen over the past century is man tends to suppress these natural low intensity fires because we think they're destructive and bad. And by doing that, that's what allows the high intensity mega fires that we have seen become the norm over the past 25 years or so. That's what allows those to run rampant. And those do destruction and bring death, not life. You see, the periodic low intensity natural forest fires, they help to clear away old brush, which allows new growth. Now, it's not man clearing away the brush that allows new growth. It's these natural low intensity fires, because these fires also recycle nutrients back into the soil. And that disperses seeds of fire-adapted plants. Yes, there are plants that are adapted to these fires. And they also burn ground cover. And this gives seedlings a chance at life that they wouldn't otherwise have. Also, when allowed to burn naturally, forest fires tend to do something amazing. They create this mosaic, this blended mix of old growth and new growth. And not only is that beautiful, but it does something very specific. It acts as a barrier to the extent of future fires. Notice I said future fires. They are going to come. It doesn't prevent them, but it acts as a barrier to the extent of them. So when a fire hits the border between old growth and new growth, it's likely to smolder out, meaning it's not going to last long. It's not going to do the same amount of damage. It's not going to be as intense as a previous one because that break in that line where those meet, the old growth and new growth, does this. It creates this phenomenon. And believe it or not, there are many trees in the forest that actually have natural adaptations that allow them to survive easier in these fires. Two trees that this is their characteristic are the jack pine and giant sequoias. And it's because they have very thick fire-resistant bark. That's why those type of pine trees and those sequoias, that wood does not burn in a fireplace, friends. It's going to be almost next to impossible to get it to burn because of this. But even beyond all that, did you know that some trees are even fire dependent? Their survival as a species and their continuation as a species is dependent on these natural low-intensity fires. Did you know that? Many pine and eucalyptus trees are such trees. You see, they will only seed, they will only throw out their seeds after a fire event when the soil is rich and there are no obstructions to light from above. That's the only time they seed out. So you see, this is one of numerous examples of this principle at work in nature, right? It's a very easy one for us to understand. Now you might be thinking, okay, yeah, Vicki, I've heard about that. I didn't know all that. That's cool. That's great, but that's nature, which has nothing to do with destruction and death being necessary for humans. Okay, now let me give you an example of how this concept takes place in the human body on a regular basis. Because death and destruction take place in the human body on a regular basis on multiple levels. I'm just going to give you one example. Believe it or not, pain and destruction are used to build strength and bring healing in the human body. Like I said, in multiple ways. One way we see this is in the physical process of building muscle. Did you know that? The process is destructive and painful. It's not just painful, it's destructive to our body. Anyone who has or does spend any length of time in the gym or working out on a regular basis, you are intimately familiar with this. At least the pain part of it, right? You know it's painful. But a lot of us don't know or realize it's also destructive. Did you realize that in order to build new muscle, which in turn increases strength and stamina within your muscular system, in order to do that, you must first destroy the muscle fibers you already have? Not change them, destroy them. You see, it is only after the literal tearing apart of the muscle fibers, which destroys their ability to function. They have to be literally torn apart. It is only during this process that healing and then the production of new muscle fibers can begin. And then guess what? The new muscle fibers that are created, they are stronger than the old. Friends, that's the transformation process. It's found in nature as well as in humans. We have to remember this, something I'm getting ready to break down. We are more than just physical beings. I think a lot of us understand that, even if we don't quite know what that means. But some of us, this may be a new concept to you. We are more than just physical beings. We are spirit beings wrapped in flesh. We are created in the image of our God. God is spirit. So friends, we are spirit beings, yet we're wrapped in flesh. We're physical as well. We are both and spirit and flesh. And we have a mind, a body, and a spirit that encompass us. We are really three beings in one, 3 in 1. What else does that look like? Our Creator, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. We're created in His image. Okay? spirit beings wrapped in flesh, and we have a mind, a body, and a spirit. So pain and destruction do not and cannot just touch and affect our physical bodies, because we're more than just physical. You see, pain and destruction also have to play a part and impact our minds and our souls. And when I say souls, that encompasses your heart and your emotions. Okay? And quite often, the type of destruction and death that come after and that impact our hearts and our minds, that can seem way more intolerable than the counterpart in the physical. Wouldn't you agree? At least I would say that's true for me. And I think it is for a lot of people as well. Here's the thing, friends. Like we discussed week 1, a broken world guarantees broken people. Simple logic. It's a if this, then this. And this broken world, it wreaks havoc and destruction on the things that are in it. That includes us. Therefore, the only real choice we have, because we don't have a choice if brokenness and destruction are coming, they are. So the only real choice we have is how we respond to that brokenness and destruction in this life and what we allow it to do in us. Are you with me? And with that being said, friends, you don't have to like something to embrace it. That's true on so many levels. As humans, we need to undergo a transformation process in order to find intimacy with others in this life. You cannot find intimacy without transformation. And here's the thing with that. Intimacy transforms us, but intimacy will also cost us. It just does. And the biggest thing it costs us is our comfort. Therefore, transformation must be a conscious choice on our part. We must willingly choose it. That must be a choice to persevere through the suffering and the pain, knowing that if we allow it, the Lord will use it to create something new in us and make us stronger than before. Friends, this is what Paul is talking about in Romans 12, verses 1 and 2. And listen to what he says there. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Notice the word sacrifice in there. Present your bodies a living sacrifice. A sacrifice refers to a death. Death presupposes pain, does it not? Almost all the time, the answer is yes to that. And because Paul says we are to present, meaning we are to choose, it's a willful choice. We are to choose to die, present our bodies a living sacrifice. So we are to choose to willingly die to our desires and our ways, which rule our bodies. We're to choose to do that willingly. In other words, we are to choose to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And we do that so the Lord can work out something great and amazing for us in this unimaginable pain or situation like only He can do. And He wants to, friends. But it's a choice we have to make. We have to allow it. He won't force Himself. Notice also that Paul says, do not be conformed, meaning the word conform means be similar to, obedient to, or compliant to. Paul says, do not be similar to, obedient to, or compliant to the world. Why? The world's broken. Brokenness that leads to death and destruction. But instead, he says, be transformed, a different type of brokenness. Transformation and brokenness that leads to restoration in life. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Right? We're not to be conformed to this world because, as we just discussed, this world is broken and only offers brokenness that leads to death and destruction for us. But we are to be transformed because it leads to the brokenness that leads to restoration in life. And how are we to be transformed? By the renewing of our mind. Why our mind? Because your mind guides your soul and your soul guides your spirit. So it always has to start there. Everything starts with a thought. Chew on that one for a while. So therefore, this is a conscious choice on our parts. We have to willingly, consciously choose this. And friends, this kind of choice will require a level of perseverance that does not come natural to us. It just doesn't. It's because it fights against our natural instincts. Our natural instinct is what? Self-preservation, right? So we need perseverance in order to not just survive, but to be able to actually live and thrive in this broken world. So then if this type of brokenness, willingly choosing these trials and these struggles for perseverance in order to get to transformation, if this is actually good and beneficial for us, why is it so stinking hard for us to do? And it's hard for me to do. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the outlier, but this is stinking hard to do. Why? Even though the act itself is simple, it's not that it's complicated. It's just harder than hell to do. Even though that's the case, the answer to why we do that is actually pretty simple. It's because doing this runs contrary to our natural instincts and our desire for self-preservation. And self-preservation is rooted in comfort. It destroys our comfort. That's why. And what did we talk about earlier? We try to make our lives as pain-free as possible, don't we? Ultimately, friends, it is only when our hearts undergo a transformation process, it's then and only then that we are able to be intimately connected to who we were created to be. Because this broken world messes that up as soon as we're born into it. And as we have discussed previously, unless and until we know who we are at an intimate level, we will never be able to have meaningful relationships with other people or our Creator. You see, the only way we can be intimately connected to who we were created to be is we must first allow ourselves to be exposed. And that is extremely uncomfortable and more often than not quite painful. And the kicker is we have to choose it. But there's a beautiful but to it. But this is also how growth unto new life takes place in our heart, which is our souls and our minds. It's the only way. And the beautiful thing that our human minds are never going to be able to comprehend this side of eternity, the beautiful thing is how our great God will take this destruction and pain that's meant for our death, and he uses it to weave this beautiful mosaic of old growth and new growth in our hearts and our minds. And that in turn makes us stronger than we were before. It's just like with the forest fires, just like he does in nature with the forest fires. Remember that line between where the old growth and the new growth met? The line between where the old growth and the new growth in your heart and mind meet, it acts as a barrier for future pain. It's not if it will come, it's when it comes. It acts as a barrier for that future pain, suffering, and destruction when it comes your way. So instead of it running out of control and being worse than it was before and doing more destruction than it did before, it smolders out. It's beautiful. Now, that doesn't mean it won't come your way, just like in nature. And it doesn't mean it isn't going to, it's going to. It just means that it won't last long, nor will it run away in a destructive manner in your life because you have allowed previous natural fires, meaning previous pain and destruction. You have allowed those events that took place to be used to bring about transformation of the soil of your heart and your mind. And in turn, that has made your heart and your mind more resilient and stronger for the future events that will come, all while bringing new life in the midst of it. This is what perseverance under adversity unto transformation means. It's what it looks like. I want to leave you with this hard truth and this understanding that if we can embrace, friends, the life you need, the life you want, the life you desire becomes possible. And here it is. Perseverance born from adversity leads to transformation. Without adversity, without struggle, without pain, without trial, there is no transformation ever. That's true in nature, and it's also true with us. So think about that. Think about the things we discussed today. And if this show today resonated with your heart and your mind, and maybe you want the pain and suffering that you have experienced, or maybe you are currently experiencing, if you want what was meant for your destruction and death to be used for something other than that in your life, then I want to encourage you to visit my website, authenticallybroken.com. You'll see it up on the screen right now. Because on that site, you're going to find a copy of my book, Stop, Drop, and Deal, which is up on the screen now as well. And in the book, I go deeper into this topic we talked about today, as well as I talk about how do you do this? How do you walk through this transformation process? What are the steps? What does it take? And you're going to find two different forms of the book on this site. You're going to find a hard copy version of the book for sale, as well as an e-reader version. And this e-reader version is downloadable onto whatever platform you have and you prefer. So you're not just allocated to have to go through Amazon Kindle if you use another platform. That's the beauty in it. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I want to encourage you to do two things for me. Okay? Can we do that? First thing is, please share it with friends and family or anyone who you think would benefit from what we're discussing here. Because if you're finding this helpful, friends, I said we live in a broken world, which means we're all broken in turn. There's probably more people than you think who need to hear this. Okay, so share it with people. And that in turn grows our family. But the second thing I want to ask you to do, and this doesn't take long, but I'm asking you to think about doing this. If you are liking the shows, if you like this community, could you give them a rating on whatever platform you're listening to these on? Right now, the show is up on Spotify as well as YouTube. I will be adding it to Apple Podcasts as well. And they have different ways to rate the shows. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to it. But here's the thing. Rating the shows on the platform you're listening to, it helps get an overall rating for the show, which means it's going to be more readily seen and available when people are searching for things to watch. It just makes it easier for others to find the show. So if you don't mind doing it, I would appreciate it. And as always, thanks for being willing to join me on this crazy journey called life. And thanks for being willing to join with me in my crazy life and my crazy self. Hopefully, who knows, maybe my life and who I am make you feel better about yours. And if that's the case, praise God. I'm thankful for that. But thank you for joining me on the crazy journey and being willing to dig deep as we discuss hard topics about life. Because friends, we discuss the gritty, raw, and hard, right? I think you would agree. But we do it in a real and an honest way because that's the only way change happens. So thank you for being willing to do that and being open to hearing it. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time, friends. Bye.